Our class will be on understanding demand theory and how to calculate the equilibrium. And so we need to understand a few key concepts under demand theory. We say demand has a downsloping curve and supply has an upsloping curve. And where these two guys meet, we call that what? Our equilibrium. So equilibrium in short occurs where demand meets what? Supply. So this is our supply, which is always upsloping. This is our demand, which is always downsloping. Where they meet, we call that equilibrium. So equilibrium price is always on this axis. Equilibrium quantity is always on this axis. So this is equilibrium price. This is equilibrium quantity. So here we have A and B. These are two triangles. So triangle A is called the consumer surplus. Triangle B is called the producer surplus. So now we're looking at this question here. We're given the demand and supply equation, and we are asked to calculate the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So we've been given these two. Already, we are asked to calculate the equilibrium. So we already established to say demand is equal to supply when we are at equilibrium. So demand is what? 220 minus what? 20p. And our supply is simply 20p minus 200. So when we equate these two equations, we want to solve for the variable. In this case, we want to solve for p. So we put letters on one side. So we have 20p. The other 20 will come this side to be plus 20p. And here we have 220. When this negative comes this side, it will add plus 200. So on this side, we're going to have 420. On this side, we're going to have what? 40p. So to solve for p, we shall divide the sides by what? 40. So divide this side by 40 and divide that side by 40. So we will get our equilibrium. So 40 into 42, our P equilibrium will be 10.5. Right, so how do we find the Q therefore? We can substitute our P, which we found as 10.5 in any of these two equations. This is equilibrium. You get the same answer. 10.5 here and here 10.5. You don't have to do both of them, just one of them will give you an answer. So when you multiply, we're going to get what? 220 minus 20. But where there's P, you put what? 10.5. So we're going to have 220 minus 10. And our equilibrium quantity will be at 10 units. We have found our equilibrium, which is 2 max. We found our equilibrium price, which is 2 max. We get your 2 max there. There's no harm also in illustrating this if you like. So how do we illustrate equation? This is where most non-economists find it a problem. So to equate, I will show you two simple equations. For instance, you have P is equal to 10, 100 minus 2Q. And we have P is equal to 10 plus 3Q. How do we equate these two equations? I'll teach you how my math teacher taught me. All linear equations has a very simple way of illustrating them. First, we need to put the letters on one side. So this will be P plus 2Q. Then you equate it to 100. Then here we're going to have P minus 3Q is equal to what? 10. You identify what are called the intercepts. You identify what are called intercepts. What number is there? There's an invisible one. What number there? There's an invisible one. What number there? There's a 2. What number is there? There's a 3. So intercepts are simply cutting points. Where will it cut the P and where will it cut the Q axis? So let's start with the demand. There's two intercepts. On the P we have 1. 1 into 100. So P will cut at 100. On the Q we have 2. 2 into 100 is 50. Just do 2 points, 1 at 100 on the P and 1 at 50 on the Q. So we have 100 here, and we have what? A 50 somewhere here. So 50 from 0 is there. So we just draw a straight line. So this is our demand function, which is what? P is equal to 100 minus what? 2Q. And here we have 1 into 10, we get a 10. What number is there? Negative 3. Negative 3 into 10, negative 3.33. So 10 is somewhere here on the p-axis. The negative 3.33 is somewhere here. We're going to join these two lines, joining from here upward. So this is what gives us what we call our equilibrium. So our equilibrium point will be when you equate these two. So using the same scenario, you can tell that this one is a demand because demand always has a negative slope. Until this is supply, even if it's not mentioned, because supply always has a positive slope. So at equilibrium, you just equate supply to demand. So our demand is 10, our supply is 10 plus 3Q. And our demand is 100 minus 2Q. And so we are going to solve. So here we're going to have 100 minus 10. And here we're going to have 3Q plus 2Q. For this side, we're going to have what? 5Q. And this side, we're going to have 90. So when you divide 5 into 90, we're going to get our equilibrium quantity as 18. And when you substitute this 18 in the Q's, any of these on here, when you put our 18 here, so 2 times 18 is 36. 36 from 100 will be 64. So our equilibrium quantity, our equilibrium price will be 64. So here you put your 64, here you put your 18. So this is what we call the equilibrium point. This is what we call our equilibrium point. We know this is called the consumer surplus, and this is called the producer surplus. This is called the consumer surplus, and that is called the producer surplus. Now, what is a consumer surplus and what is a producer surplus? So consumer surplus, which is also called a social surplus, in economics is simply the difference which exists between the price that the consumer pays for an item against the price that he is willing to pay rather than to do without it. That is what we call our consumer surplus. It's a social surplus. So this is the price above which a consumer is willing to pay. If, for instance, the acceptable price for tomato is 5 kwacha and you decide to pay 6 kwacha, so the surplus is a 1 kwacha on top, excess, on top of what? On top of what you are supposed to pay. So this is what we call our surplus. So consumer surplus is also called the social surplus. It is simply the consumer's surplus, where the difference between the price that the consumer actually pays and the price that would be willing to pay. So this is how we calculate it. So going back to our sample question that we're looking at, we just discussed how to come up with a surplus. So say the demand is given by 220 minus 20p, and our supply is 20p minus 200. Even though this wasn't there, we know that demand has a negative slope. So slope is the letter which comes, number which comes before the letter. So this is negative 20p. This one is positive what? 20p. So this is our supply and this is our demand. So how do we then plot? I said you put letters on one side. So for the demand, we're going to have Q plus 20p is equal to what? 220. Then the other one, when we put letters on one side, we're going to have Q minus 20p is equal to what? Negative 200. Like. So here there's a 1. 1 into 220. What do we get? We get 220. So we put 220 here. 20 into 220. What do we get? 11. And here there's a 1. 1 into negative 200, negative 200. And here we have negative 20. Negative 20 into negative 200, we get positive what? 10. So now it gives you a picture of how you're going to draw your curve. So for this demand, we have a price here and a quantity. And the price, it will touch at 11. And the quantity, it will touch at 220. Here is your 220. Here, you touch at what? 10. Then here it is negative 200. Although we don't consider the negative side, we're really interested in the what? The positive quadrant. So this is our supply, and this is our demand. And we already established this is starting from 10. So it's starting from 10 there. We calculated our equilibrium price at 10.5. So put our 10.5 here. And we calculated our equilibrium quantity as 10. Put our 10 there. So this is how the plot will look like. This is our consumer surplus, and this is our what? Producer surplus. So this is how we sketch. Economics, you never leave an exam without a diagram. All economists must learn that for you need to understand these curves. All right. Now, the code here that suppose the equation of the supply changes. We initially had put 20p minus 200. Now we have 40p minus 80. And our demand remains unchanged. We are asked to calculate our new equilibrium. Let's go through it again. Our demand is given by what? 20 minus 20p. And our supply is given as what? 40p minus 80. What happens at equilibrium? Demand is equal to what? Supply. So our demand is 220 minus 20p. Our supply is 40p minus what? 80. So to equate these two, we have 220 here, and the 80 will add when it comes aside. And here we have 40p. What happens to negative 20? When it comes aside, it will be addition. So 20. So here, addition gives us 300. Here, the addition gives us what? 60p. So we divide both sides by 60. Divide both sides by 60. So our P becomes what? Equilibrium price becomes 5.
That's 5.
So how do we find our equilibrium quantity? We substitute in any of these ones, you can pick any of them. So Q is equal to 40p minus 80. Where there is P, you put what? 5. So we're going to put a 5 there. So we're going to have what? 100 minus 80 to give us 120. So this is 120. As our equilibrium what? Equilibrium quantity. I know it's not advisable to do this, but practically holding things constant, hoping that they're all starting from there. We know that our demand is downsloping, our supply is upsloping. We have our equilibrium price, 5, put a 5 there. Equilibrium quantity is what? 120. Now, how do we ascertain the constant, the intercept? These 3 intercepts are important. 1, 2, 3. In fact, only 2 are important because this is where we're going to get the consumer surplus. So in this case, we start with the demand. For the demand, you put the letters on one side. All right. For the demand, you put the letters on one side. So we're going to have Q. We're going to have what? Q plus 20p is equal to 220. And for this one here, we're going to have Q minus 40p is equal to negative 80. So what number is there? 1. 1 into 220, we get 20. What number there? 20. 20 into 220, we get 11. So 20 and 11. So where there's Q, we put 220. Where there's P, we put 11. So 220, P is 11, you put 11 there, and this is 220. We go to the demand. What number is there? 1. And this is 80. 1 into negative 80, you get negative 8. What number is there? Negative 40. Negative 40 into 80 is positive 2. So we just need this positive part of the price. So here you put your 2. So this becomes our graph. Consumer surplus is here. Producer surplus is here. So if you're going to extract the diagram there, you discover that your consumer surplus, the distance from 11 to 5 is 6. From 0 to 120 is 120. How do you find the consumer surplus? This is simply half times base times height. So our base is 120, our height is 6. So when you multiply that, you get 360. And the producer surplus is this triangle here. So the distance from here to here is the same 120, but the distance between 5 and 2 is what? 3. So what becomes our formula? Same. Producer surplus is simply half h. This is a triangle. Our base is simply the same 120, and our height is simply 3. Right? So when you multiply that, we're going to get 108. This is called our producer surplus. When we add these two, we get the total surplus. Total surplus in this case will be 540. So this is called our total surplus. All right, so this is basically what we just had to look at today. I will need you to go through this video and also answer this theoretical part. What are the factors that determine the price elasticity of demand? To start with, demand is affected by a number of factors. What are the factors that affect demand? The price of that good, the price of a substitute good, the price of a complementary good. What else? The income. What else affects your demand? Advertising, population, tests, technology, weather, etc. Of these ones are very key. Factors that affect the price elasticity of demand is the price of that good, the price of a complementary good, the price of a substitute good, the income. These ones are very important because they also give you factors that affect elasticity. And as such, we have what we call price elasticity of demand, or price elasticity of demand coming from the good itself. We also have what we call cross price elasticity of demand, where the good is crossing from good X to good Y. Because of Y, we have what we call the income elasticity of demand. This simply looks at the sensitivity that one has due to changes in income. If your income is negative, call that what? An inferior good. If your elasticity of income is negative, we call that an inferior good. If the elasticity of income is positive, we call that a normal good. But on these normal goods, if it's between 0 and 1, it's a necessity. If it's above 1, it's a luxury good. When we're dealing with cross price elasticity, if you get a negative answer, we say it's a complementary good. If you get a positive answer, we say it's a substitute good. For elasticity of demand, we always know it's negative. But between these negatives, there are 3 regions you need to know. Between 0 and -1, we say it is inelastic. And it's exactly at -1, we say it is unit elastic, unitary. When it is greater than 1, of course, in the negative, these are actually lesser values. When it's less than 1, numerically greater than 1, we say it is what? Elastic. So if you have figures like A is -0.2, B -1, C -5, and D -9.2. Anything starting with a 0 is inelastic. So this is inelastic. This is unitary. This is elastic, and this is very elastic. So you need to know how to interpret and know each of these. So I will ask you to try question number 1, answer it in its totality. Then question number 2, we'll look at it in the evening, right? So please make sure you get the link on the group for more information or queries. You can contact me on this line. Unless there are any questions, please ask. If there are no questions, you'll be invited to the next class in our next session. Thank you so much.